All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is the NBA Tournament Strategy Show, where on this show, we talk about last night's slate, what went well, what might not have gone as well. And then we talk about, we go game by game, talk about guys that we like, guys who might not like their spot as much. But then on the pre-lock show, which is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time for VIP members only, link is in the description. Feel free to use the promo code BOB. We go over the leverage plays, the core plays, guys are going under on. I also show how I'm utilizing the domination station that night. And yeah, that's pretty much what we do. That's pretty much the game plan for today. Let's jump right into last night's slate. Let's see, Dave. Good to see you, man. And agreed. Yeah, definitely do hit the like button, share and subscribe. Appreciate all of y'all's help, especially you, Dave. Appreciate you, man. Thomas Dye, good to see you as well. Let's look at this, guys. This is last night's $100,000 winning lineup. Tyrese Halliburton made the line. Yeah, for me last night was pretty good. Leverage plays hit in some solid spots. We had a lot of exposure to the Memphis Grizzlies, so I had a solid, profitable night, which I'll take. Any day of the week. Not a gigantic win because I still had too much Middleton, and I think we lost Drew a little bit in some of the later runs, but I still had too much. So if that didn't go as poorly as it did, things could have been a really, really good night. But you gotta take your win. So I'll take it as it is. Tyrese Halliburton, I did not have a lot of exposure to. I don't believe. He was doing fine, but I think overtime really helped him. Really helped him kind of break the slate a little bit, but still was a solid play. We talked about him on this show. Fantastic spot for him. Wasn't someone I was trying to fade by any means. Just happened that way. Jalen Green was a core play, so you can always tell when most people are struggling. I think last night was a night that a lot of people struggled on because there were quite a few guys who made the nuts lineup that didn't really exceed value. They just did enough. And so that's Jalen Green, Isaiah Livers, Keegan Murray. All these guys were just guys who did just enough. They didn't really have a ceiling performance. They were just priced well. Brooke Lopez was a leverage play for me, so I'm glad that panned out for us. Josh Hart was super low owned, went off. Jabari Smith wasn't a guy I forced exposure to, but I think I did have around 2% exposure or maybe around field weight. That's thanks to the domination station. That wasn't someone I tried to force in. And then Tyus Jones was a core play or close to it. We had plenty of exposure to him as well last night. So all in all, I know it wasn't a great night for everyone, so I don't want to celebrate too much, but it was a solid slate in my opinion. All right, let's dig into tonight's slate. Another relatively small slate, which is always interesting on a Friday. I'm not upset about it. I kind of like these medium-sized slates, but I know it's not everyone's favorite thing. Let's start off with the Trailblazers. We have Anthony Simons listed as questionable. If he returns against the 76ers, it really just makes all of the Trailblazers less interesting to me. A low-owned Damian Lillard is always a viable tournament strategy play. At 5% ownership, Damian Lillard is relatively matchup proof in my mind, these days at least. I understand taking a shot on him, but at least as of right now, he's just not someone that I'm super excited to force exposure to, especially if Anthony Simons ends up playing, because that will cut into his usage falls about 3.5 points when Simons is on the court. And so it's just hard to make a great case for him because nothing's really standing out too much. Dave said, Josiah, how high in entry fees for GPPs do you go? Is it the $20 GPPs? Is that as high as you go? I hope you can get what I'm trying to say. Yeah. No, so for me, it varies, man. It just varies on what's going on in life, how heavy I want to play that slate. I used to play a lot of the $15 100K winning lineups. That's how I won 100K twice. But these days I usually keep it pretty small. I play in the micro a good bit. Some days I do play in the $2, $3 GPPs. Other days I play in the $4 20 max, and I play in the $3 $100 3 max or $200 3 max. Other days I'll do a 20 max and play in the $88 contest and play 7 to 10 lines in there. It just really depends on any given slate, whatever I feel like doing that day. But here lately, I've been 150 maxing. I think over the next few weeks, I do want to start 20 maxing and playing more high entry fee GPPs just because it's been a little bit since I've done it. So trying to get back into the swing of things. So yeah, a little bit of everything, to be honest with you, man. Hopefully that answered your question. If I totally misunderstood it, feel free to reword your question. So yeah, jumping back to the Trailblazers. I don't have a lot of love for them, to be honest. But I do think there's an argument to be made for Lillard. I skipped a game. So let's go to the Hawks. Trae Young had an awesome game the other night. Congrats to him. Yeah. I mean, I think technically I might have won it 3 times, but I think 1 time was a split. So I only count the 2 times. So yeah, no worries. All right. So yeah, Trae Young had a fantastic game last time out against the Wizards. I personally am not trying to chase it. He was 11 for 14, so he's pretty efficient, like I said. If DeJounte Murray was lower owned, I had more interest in him as a potential leverage play, but just because he's pretty popular already, I'm not as excited about forcing him into some of my lines. But I do prefer, but I am comfortable having some exposure to him. Whereas Trae Young, I'm just gonna let the domination station do its thing. Funny enough, we've seen John Collins. He had a solid game last time out, played more minutes than he has for a while, which means Sadiq Bey didn't see as minutes as he's had. Seeing that John Collins has solid ownership, again, kind of like DeJounte Murray, if he was lower owned, I'd be more so willing to go back to the well here. But we've seen the Hawks play around with Bay's and John Collins minutes a bit too much for me to feel comfortable with it. Since we did see John Collins have a relatively solid performance against the Wizards, specifically, it does make me feel like he's a little bit more of a safer play than he would be in like a new matchup. Maybe the coach likes playing John Collins more against the Wizards here. I am not certain, but because he's not a sneaky play, he's not someone I'm really trying to force into my lines tonight. Yeah, don't really like the Hawks tonight too much. I do like some games later on. I promise I don't hate everyone, but I'm just not excited about the Hawks. Porzingis is another guy who had a solid game against a team that he played recently, which is the Hawks, and he also has solid ownership for that reason. Another guy that I'm just really not trying to force exposure to. He's projecting solidly well, so I'm sure the domination station will give me some solid exposure to him, which is nice. But he's not someone that I'm super excited about. Again, a lot of that has to do with his ownership. Bradley Beal is still a little bit too cheap. We've been on the Bradley Beal train for a while, and he's been coming through for us more often than not. I'll probably, once again, at least be around field weight. The sim model still likes him a good bit, so I'm just going to keep riding the train until it doesn't work out for me. It does hurt. It does feel weird a little bit, but I do feel comfortable going there. I know Kuzma had a really strong performance in this spot last time out. Last time he was a B-dubs leverage play and he made the nuts line, so that was good to see. And he was a natural leverage play for us. Again, like he's not really standing out for me too much, but kind of like on the last slate, if the domination station likes him, I'm fine having some exposure to him. But when they're healthy, I just don't like forcing exposure to either of these teams, and both the Wizards and the Hawks are healthy tonight. So just one of those spots where no one really stands out for me. And we talked about Portland, similar story here. If Simon plays, I don't have a lot of interest. If Simon doesn't play, I am interested in taking some shots on a relatively low-owned Lillard, assuming that would still be the case. But outside of Simons being questionable, Ryan is still out. Baji's still out. Winslow's still out. Nothing really stands out for me too much there in a tough matchup. For the 76ers, we have, again, another team where, for the most part, everyone's healthy. Everyone is healthy. Maxi's been on fire here lately, ever since he's moved into the starting lineup. He's just been very efficient as well. So He's done it consistently enough where I feel like we might just need to start buying in. He was a core play, I think, on the last slate, so it's not like we haven't been on him for a while. Um, I, this isn't really a spot I'm planning on forcing a lot of exposure to him in particular, but I do think he's still a viable play on this slate. I don't really have a lot of interest in Harris when everyone's healthy. Harden is someone that, once again, like other guys I've already mentioned, I'm okay with having some exposure to, but I'm not really trying to force exposure to. Joel Embiid is more interesting than me. Let's see if the sim model likes him. It's not really a fan. But we have been picking on this Portland team a good bit this season. And so at relatively low ownership, I have another center I like more that is going to be a leverage play. Actually, I have two who are going to be leverage plays. So I'll have to play around a little bit before the pre-lock show to see if I can fit Joel Embiid in my lines, but I think he's definitely viable for me on this slate. Next game, we have the lowest game total on the slate. I feel like we've seen this matchup a few times, but maybe I'm just going crazy. We have the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Miami Heat. The Cavaliers are healthy, facing a pretty good Miami Heat defense. The Heat are relatively healthy these days. Kevin Love is listed as probable. Kyle Lowry's been out forever. Nikola Jovic has been out forever, so none of that really matters. Here, you'll see everyone has low ownership for the most part, and that's because it's a tough matchup, lowest game total on the slate. That doesn't mean we have to X these guys out of our player pool. It just means that this is not a game I'm trying to force exposure to or that I need like 2 to 3 pieces from. Is more so one-offs. So oddly enough, still no one's standing out particularly much for me, but I'm okay with taking shots on Mitchell and Garland, and that's pretty much it. I don't like the cheap guys in that game. Similar story for the Miami Heat. We saw Jimmy Butler be pretty efficient in this matchup recently, and so it's definitely not outside the realm of possibilities. But again, just not a spot I'm trying to force exposure to because it's less likely that that happens again. But again, low owned, always a viable tournament play. Bam, I'm still not trying to take a shot on. I understand the case for it. Like, he's another guy that, as long as this game stays close, like it should with a relatively close spread, and they see plenty of run, they can be extremely efficient and get there, but I just like other centers more on this slate. All right. Nice, Jamar. Hope you're doing well too, man. Two Jamars. Jamar Smith. Good to see you, man. All right. For the Nets, the team that pissed a lot of people off yesterday. I think more likely than not, everything goes back to normal here. As of right now, Spencer Dinwiddie is expected to play. Nick Claxton's listed as TBD. Cam Johnson's listed as TBD. Royce O'Neal's listed as TBD. I think everyone's expecting those guys to be healthy and Ben Simmons to be the only guy that's out. And he's been out for a while, so I don't think anything there is too crazy. Once again, I know Mikal Bridges hurt a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but I know he disappointed some people last night. But I know we got some of that news that broke that he was going to see limited minutes. He still saw some solid runs. So I wasn't really overly concerned about that. I'm okay going back to well on him. Spencer Dinwiddie's getting ownership for good reason. As long as no weird news happens, I'll probably be around field weight exposure to him. I think he's a solid play, solid matchup against the Timberwolves. His price tag is still cheap for being like a starting point guard in this league who sees a lot of minutes and is typically pretty efficient while he's out there. So I don't have any reason to not be at least around field weight, but I'm also not excited enough about him to try and be double the field on 26% ownership. If it happens naturally because the domination station just likes him that much, I'm okay with it, but still not a spot I absolutely love. Similar story of Cam Johnson. I kind of want to find potential spots that I might like more, but as of right now, I'm okay being around field weight. And then Royce O'Neal's projecting pretty well, and also like he'll be pretty popular because he's just a little bit too cheap. Cam Thomas at 5,800 is ridiculous unless everyone ends up being out. Also, how just yesterday's situation with him was just stupid, but whatever. But yeah, Mikal Bridges, I'm totally, you know what? Let's see what the Simono thinks about Mikal Bridges. 8,200 is a little pricey. It's not a fan of him. So I do look at a lot of different tools and not just the sim model, but usually if the sim model agrees with someone that I like a little bit, I feel a bit more comfortable making them a leverage play. Now I'm feeling a little bit more like, okay, Mikal Bridges will probably be closer to around field weight, but I do think he'll be interesting leverage play. So I'm still kind of noting that in my head. No, Andrew said you hit 100K last night. Damn, no, I did not win 100K last night. That is not true. No, but I've won it before. I've won it a couple times. Not last night though. Not last night. Last night was a good night, but it wasn't that good of a night. um, yeah, I think that's it. Like the Nets are fine. They're fine plays. They're not standing out enough for me. I like these last two games much more than these early four games, and so that's why most of these other plays are just kind of like, okay, yeah, your lineup fillers. I get it. Anthony Edwards is a guy that I like a lot at 9,500. We've seen the upside he brings to the table. He was a leverage play for B Dubs, who's a DFS Army coach here with us here with us here at DFS Army as well. And so he was on Anthony Edwards on the last slate, and that went pretty well for him. I think Anthony Edwards is in a solid spot once again. Sim model likes him a decent bit as well. And so it's nice having that support and backing from the sim model. I don't know if this will be like a 20% play for me, or if his ownership falls around 10%, I can almost guarantee that I'll have a 20% min on him. But if his ownership moves towards 15%, a 20% min wouldn't be a leverage play. And I don't love Anthony Edwards enough to make him a 30%, to put a 30% min on him. So I can say I'll have exposure to him tonight, but just depending on how his ownership shifts throughout the slate will depend on if he's actually a leverage play for me or not. Rudy Gobert is in a solid spot against a Nets team that has been struggling here recently against bigs. So once again, Rudy Gobert is in play. Kyle Anderson is just another solid mid-range value play that we can look at. I hate Kyle Anderson, especially when he's pretty chalky. I'm okay being around field weight, but not someone that's going to be a core play or someone that I'm going to be extremely over the field on. That's my own personal bias in there, though. So I like to point that out when that's happening. It looks like Mike Conley and Nas Reed are projecting decently well, too. To be honest, they're not guys that are really on my radar, but if they pop into some of my lines, I'm okay with it. And then Jaden McDaniels at 4,700. I believe the sim model likes him, but I want to make sure I'm not making stuff up. Yeah, it does like him, and it likes Victor Oladipo too. So I mean, I think Jaden McDaniels is projecting well. If he ends up in my lines, like he's one of those relatively chalky semi-value plays that I'm not going to try and lower exposure to. And again, like the Nets just aren't a team that we have to avoid. They have improved a lot defensively, but they're just not a team that we need to like try and dodge. I think that's where the ownership's coming from. And also just the price tag at 4,700 is solid. No worries, man. No worries. Good to see you, Andrew. Looks like Nas getting a lot of ownership too. I need to look into that and see why he's popping so much. Am I missing something? Noble's out and Cat's out. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I need to look a little bit closer at that to see if I'm down to play 40% of Nah. And that's Nickeil Alexander Walker. I don't think I'm going to go there, but we'll know for sure by the pre-lock show. I could just be missing something big there, but I don't think so. Next up, we have games that I like. The Nuggets against the Spurs. The concern about this game is that the potential of a blowout is pretty high. It's a 12.5 point spread. And that's why all these guys are relatively low owned. Personally, I don't really get overly concerned about a blowout if I like the player's ownership. If there's a relatively high chance of a blowout and everyone's super popular, I'm less of a fan. But when everyone's relatively low owned, I'm here for it. Would love to see Jokic's ownership fall. And I'm laughing because it literally just went up by 1%. I would like if that got closer to 10% so I could put a 20% min on him and be in a good spot. But if he ends up being closer to 15%, I am comfortable putting a 30% min on him. We all know what it's like to play Jokic. He has a ton of upside. He usually has a relatively safe floor. Of course, if this game blows out, there's some concern there, but this is a extremely soft matchup, and so hopefully he can just dominate from that standpoint. I also like Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr.'s upside here. Again, this is an extremely soft matchup against a really bad Spurs team, and so I like being over the field on these spots where I feel like these players can take advantage and of the matchup and really just have a more efficient game at low ownership. I pretty much always take those kind of plays. Uh, Reggie Jackson has been seeing more minutes than I think everyone kind of expected. That has uh kind of impacted some of like Bruce Brown a good bit. We haven't seen him have a ceiling performance in a while, so less interested in some of the filler pieces. Since we're kind of lacking value right now, you can talk me into uh why. Like, I understand why people are playing Reggie Jackson, but I'm hoping we won't be that desperate for value tonight. We do kind of need some big news. I guess that is a thing. Like, we haven't talked about fully. Yeah, we did see, like, when was it? Was it Wednesday? Where we didn't have a lot of value, and then we got some value from the Thunder we didn't like a lot, and the balance build approach was actually kind of the best way to go. It could be one of those slates, but don't really foresee myself playing it that way. For the Spurs, we do have some injury news. We have Jeremy Sochan listed as probable. Zach Collins is not on the injury report. Trey Jones is not on the injury report. Doug McDermott is probable. Romeo Langford's probable, and Kim Birch is out. And what I mean by injury news is that they're pretty healthy. They haven't been this healthy in a long time. And that's why we've been playing a lot of Spurs here recently, because they've had at least one guy out for what feels like almost the entire season. So with these guys being pretty healthy, um, we're going to see uh, that we're not going to see the same kind of value from guys like Trey Jones and Sachan and Zach Collins as much. The usage rate is really just going to balance out a bit more. There's definitely the potential of some ceiling performances still happening. So it's not like, again, I'm Xing these guys out of my player pool, but just kind of like some of the other games, not trying to force a lot of exposure to this game. Devin Vassell is popping a little bit from like a projection and ownership standpoint. I get it. I think it's mostly because we're desperate for value. Like I said, we have been playing guards against the Nuggets with some decent success this season. So I'm more open to Vassell and Trey Jones than some of the other guys available that we talked about on the slate earlier. It's risky because of the spread, and especially with Devin Vassell. If the game blows out, he's not going to see a lot of run. But if a miracle happens and it stays close, then there's a chance. This is probably my favorite game on the slate, to be honest. The Raptors against the Lakers. And of course, it's the last game on the slate, so that usually helps a little bit. The Lakers the Lakers just, we've been playing bigs against them all season, and we can still do that. And so for me, what that looks like is that I'm playing a lot of Pascal Siakam. Can almost guarantee he'll be a leverage play for me unless he just ends up being super popular for some weird reason. I like Fred VanVleet a lot, so I plan on at least being around field weight to him, if not slightly over the field. So probably a little bit closer to like a 30% min. Not a leverage play, but still someone that I want to be over the field on. And then Jakob Poeltl, we've been playing him for a while and he just keeps coming through for us. And kind of like Lopez yesterday, no one else is playing him. And so it's just like, okay, I guess I will. And so I'm fine. I think as of right now, I feel more comfortable having like a 20% min on him because I like Jokic and because I like the center for the Lakers. I know his name is Anthony Davis, but I was trying to save it until we got to the Lakers. But since I like two really expensive centers, I can probably fit Jakob Poeltl in pretty easily. But if I put like a 30% min on him, but I'll have to play around with that. So I can't like guarantee he'll be a leverage play for me, but I do plan on being over the field on him again. And then Scotty Barnes could be a little sneaky here, I think, at 8% ownership. I don't recall if the sim model likes him or not. Scotty Barnes, 3.2. Yeah, it does like him a decent bit. And what I look at here again, I know there's always some people who might not always watch, is just comparing this 8x column, which is like their upside, to the other players around him in his price range, and he definitely stands out a little bit. So at 8% ownership, that's a shot I'm willing to take. 20% would be a little bold. I would prefer to be around 15%. So as long as he stays around that 8% range, I'll feel comfortable with that. 20% if I just start to love it as I do more research throughout the day, which is possible, which is possible. So yeah, I really like the Raptors. I like all of their starters. Anunoby's okay, but not really a guy that I'm trying to force exposure to. So I guess all the starters minus OG. And then for the Lakers, I mean, it's Anthony Davis for me. I mean, that's all I really care about. He does see a slight decrease in usage when D'Angelo Russell has been playing, so that's worth mentioning at least. But Anthony Davis without LeBron James, the upside is always there for him. The matchup isn't fantastic, but his ownership is. So and what I mean by he's relatively low owned on a slate where he still sees solid usage in this spot. So I'm gonna be over the field to Anthony Davis, and hopefully that will help carry my lines. I think the toughest thing about tonight is just going to be the lack of value. And personally, for me, I think everyone kind of has their own way that they go about it. I usually just kind of trust the domination station to mix and match the right value for me most of the time. For me, all I really care about is hitting on my low owned studs and my low owned sneaky plays like Scotty Barnes and other guys like that. So hopefully we'll get some more value to make it a little bit easier to force in some of those studs. So it might be a little bit easier for me to get some exposure to guys like Joel Embiid, who I'm also interested in. But we'll just have to kind of see how news breaks. So appreciate everyone for joining once again. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Have a good weekend. If I don't see you all on the pre-lock show, have a good one. Peace out.